The CFR members have held key positions in every single administration from Franklin Roosevelt to George W. Bush. Just a couple people here. Obviously, in the book, I go through a lot of names and the positions that they hold within the government. Richard Cheney, Vice President; Colin Powell, Secretary of State; Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor; Paul Wolfowitz, Deputy Secretary of Defense. These are like the main people in the Bush administration that are part of the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, obviously, that any sort of direction that these people give President Bush in the various areas of their expertise, it obviously can't be good. Obviously, Richard Cheney has been in the government before as Secretary of Defense. Colin Powell obviously was involved in Desert Storm. So we can see how even when Bush became president, he pulled from these people immediately because they were involved in his dad's administration, and also because of the aura that he wanted to bring to his presidency. James P. Warburg, banker, economist, and member of Franklin Roosevelt's Brain Trust and son of Paul Warburg of the Council on Foreign Relations, told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on February 17, 1950, "We shall have world government whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent." So there's a lot of different things. The congressional record really is a good source for a lot of things that are said in congressional hearings and stuff like that. And so you can see, as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, you can see what their goals are. They're basically telling you right up front what their goals are. I can remember I had initially wrote the manuscript for this book I pulled it together in 1984. And that was before I was married, and I told my wife, I said, "You should have never married a man that had 2 4-drawer filing cabinets in his bedroom." So, and she would go to bed early, and I'd be over her apartment, and I'd be working on my book on her kitchen table. And so I basically put it together, and I was trying to get it published, and one of the Christian bookstores in the area had offered to sell it for me. So I made copies and was selling the manuscript through there, and it actually sold pretty good, but I was trying to get it published, and it was very kind of unsuccessful so I sort of threw the manuscript in a box. But after the Persian Gulf War in the early 90s, I began to see where they were acclimating our country to the term New World Order. And after I began to realize that, I said, well, I got to get this out, and I got to rework this. And I remember my wife standing in the doorway of the den saying, "You've been working on this book ever since I met you." And I'm still working on the book. But in the early 90s, you can see where using the term New World Order, which is a term that actually used many years ago. It's not really a new term. But New World Order was the thing to make it, using that term back then, in conjunction with the Persian Gulf War, where we poured a lot of allies together to have a coalition to go against Iraq, which we probably had more justification at that time than this time. And the term New World Order was propagated upon us at that time to make us think that this is a good thing, this is a positive thing. And the quote that we have here is it takes on a negative connotation. So they had to change that to give it a positive connotation and to make it look like that we want this when we don't really want this. Chicago Tribune, December 9, 1950, said the members of the council are persons of much more than average influence in the community. They have used the prestige that their wealth, their social position, their education have given them to lead their country towards bankruptcy and military debacle. They should look at their hands. There is blood on them, the dried blood of the last war and the fresh blood of the present one. 1954, the Special House Committee to Investigate Tax-Exempt Foundations, the Reese Committee, said that, now this was the same committee that also, we had the quote earlier from Norman Dodd talking about the communist leanings of the foundations, and it sort of all went hand in hand because a lot of the foundation, the officers of the foundations are also involved in major companies that are affecting the finance of this nation, and together with cross membership in various organizations, the CFR came up in this investigation, the Council on Foreign Relations. So the Council on Foreign Relations was, in essence, an agency of the United States government, and he discovered that their directives were aimed at overwhelmingly at promoting the globalistic concept. So these are things that actually at that time did not come out that much in the press. People weren't aware of the kinds of things that were going on behind the scenes, because people have the connotation in their mind when they think of foundations, all foundations are doing a good thing. So there really wasn't a lot of attention on the hearings at that time. Harper's Magazine, July 1958, said that the Council on Foreign Relations want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty and the national independence of the United States. What they strive for would inevitably lead to dictatorship and loss of freedoms by the people. The CFR was founded for the purpose of promoting disarmament and submergence of U.S. sovereignty and national independence into an all-powerful one-world government. And we could see at that time where the word was getting out, but it wasn't getting out. Because at the time, especially at that time, you're coming out of the communist era where, there was the McCarthy era and stuff like that. So if you ascribe to points of view like this, you were really considered a radical. So people that did know about this stuff didn't really talk about it. December 23rd, 1961, columnist Edith Kermit Roosevelt, who was the granddaughter of President Theodore Roosevelt, wrote in the Indianapolis News that the CFR's policies favor gradual surrender of the United States sovereignty to the United Nations. And again, because of how much of the policy of socialism, of communism that was involved in the tenets of the Council on Foreign Relations, and because of the major philosophies of the Council on Foreign Relations being hoisted upon the United Nations from its concept in the 1940s, we can see where they're coming from with this quote. And of course, the United Nations, we have to make it look like that it's a good thing. We have to make it like that this country agrees with it. And it was like a major public relations gimmick to be able to do that. And a lot of things were covered up, and so that the people didn't know what the real reason for it. It was a little bit differently when the League of Nations in the early 1900s was trying to make a world government. People basically, I believe because it was a more Christian nation, I think more people's eyes were open to what was trying to go on. But in the, you're talking about in the mid-century, then I believe that, we were basically starting to go downhill because Christianity was beginning to weaken in this country. And I believe that's why they were more or less being able to do more things at that time. Like I said, that middle era of 1948 with those different things happening, which I described as a prophetic trigger, I believe that at that time really a web of deceit began coming over this country to be able to hide things that they could begin operating behind the scenes. Researcher Dan Smoot, a former FBI agent, said that their goal, the Council on Foreign Relations, was to create a one-world socialist system and make the United States an official part in it. An official part in that we're in it and don't know that we're in it. Representative John Rarick of Louisiana said in 1971 that the Council on Foreign Relations was dedicated to one world government, is financed by a number of the largest tax-exempt foundations, and wielding such power and influence over our lives in the areas of finance, business, labor, military, education, and mass communications media. This is a gentleman that actually spoke out quite a bit on the